Okay, what is up, everyone? It is Saturday, March 26th, 2022. I'm here with another family education and support group. Looking forward to this one and looking forward to anyone who's here watching to be able to, in real time, respond to some of your questions, take your feedback, take your, and provide some support at the end of the day, right? So these are the family education and support groups. They happen here on this Facebook and our YouTube page every single Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Param. I'm the person that facilitates this group. Good morning, Jim. Good to see you, my friend. And whoever else comes on too, I'm just going to say good morning in advance to all of you because one by one, it throws me out of my introduction rhythm. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have this platform, this opportunity to be able to share as much as I can with those coming. Hossein John Lin, good morning, my friends. And so a little bit about myself and why I do this. That's always a fair thing to say. It's so my name is Param. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy with an emphasis in child development. I am a licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor. I'm the person who manages an intensive outpatient treatment facility in Huntington Beach, California, named Buckeye Recovery Network. And I'm passionate about prevention and education and teaching people valuable information that might help them in their journey of discovering self, discovering others, and all that kind of stuff. So the vision behind this family education support program was to offer information, education on various topics such as mental illness, addiction, recovery, communication, rebuilding trust, boundaries, codependency, self-care, and a little bit of everything in between. So each week, those are the kind of things we talk about. And it is an interactive session. So when you have questions and you want to ask them, you feel free to put them in the comment section. I will do my best to answer in real time. And today I'm talking a little bit about, so when family members get exposed to addiction, at first, it's a very overwhelming process, especially if they've never had it in their lives and they're not used to it overtaking their mind, body, spirit, soul, their entire life experience. I mean, parents go to work and their whole entire thought is consumed with what's happening with their loved one at all times. So it's safe to say that no matter where they are, they're not really there. And there are certain elements that show up in the family unit of those who are struggling with addictions that are pretty much universal, but they're very unique to the individual when they're going through it by themselves. So they feel like they are literally losing their mind because they're the only person going through it. And we know as a byproduct of that collective experience, things like support groups got created. And support groups, the beauty of them is the individual can go into a room and have a common sense of identification with the other people there because they have also experienced a similar situation. Now, let's just go with one of the most popular 12-step groups with 12 steps of like Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon or Narcotics Anonymous and Nar-Anon. The reason I bring those up is because they're well attended and they're all over the world, no matter where you're from. And the same way a counselor, a therapist like me would tell a program participant, hey, you need to go to meetings, you need to learn about what's being taught there, you need to get some support for yourself, you need to find some solution for yourself. There are many people that take that advice and it goes in one ear and out the other and say, yeah, but it's not for me. Now, I will tell you this, that family members are no different than the program participants oftentimes. So you tell a family member to go to an Al-Anon meeting and they say, oh, that sounds great. That sounds so good. I like the support there. It's free. It's no cost. And I can be anonymous and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I love it. And it goes in one ear and out the other. And there's family members that can go on years and years and years and years and never step foot into a meeting. Or they go to one and it's like a foreign language because it's like, well, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. And they don't allow themselves to hear the commonalities in the sense of identification, and they never go back. So they never give it a fair try. And a lot of your loved ones, by the way, do that with other support groups. So if you are one person that decided to at some point not go to support groups, this talk is going to expose you to some information of topics that are shared and deeply discussed in those meetings. And if any of these topics resonates with you, if any of these topics that I'm bringing up are your truth, your experience, your reality, then maybe going to a support group for yourself could be something that will benefit your not only your loved one, absolutely your loved one, but yourself also. So I'm just going to name off random topics, and you can identify if you have those or think you have those, don't have those, whatever it is. But the first one for family members is this thing called control issues. Now, when you tell someone who is being controlling that they're controlling, they're going to deny it like the plague. But control issues also manifest this way. So the question is, do you have control issues? And it's, do you try to step in and solve problems for others? Like, do you try to provide the solutions for other people's problems? Do you try to actually solve their problem? Do you try to control and manipulate the outcome of someone else's problem? Now, you might think that you're coming in and saving the day. You might think that you're coming in and you're providing some relief off someone else because you solved their problem for them. But guess what? You also rob them of the dignity of being able to solve their own problems. You rob them of the journey of what it takes to be invested in one's own life and the consequences of it, and to be able to problem solve and find a solution to get themselves out of it. Because I will tell you this, that if you solve a problem once, maybe that's okay. But if it becomes a repetitive, habitual pattern of rescuing another human being, do you really think you're rescuing them? Do you really think that you're helping that person live another day? I promise you this, that what happens is you actually cripple that individual. You actually rob them, like I said, of the dignity of being able to solve their own problems. You actually make that individual feel like they're incapable of solving their own problems. And that goes exactly of what you're trying to do. You're trying to help them, but you're hurting them. So these control issues that family members experience through the process of addiction, trust me, I know this for a fact. Firsthand, my mom and dad are watching this. They come out of love. It's like a reaction of fear that I got to fix this for my kid. And it's out of love. But when days go by, weeks go by, months go by, years go by, we get distorted of that message. And all of a sudden, it's not about love anymore. It becomes about self, because I can be a little bit more at peace because that problem doesn't exist. I'm a little more at peace because my kid doesn't have to deal with that. It becomes about self, and that's where codependency kicks in. So the next topic is enabling. I mean, if you're a human being that's gone through the addiction process and you've heard counselors tell you to stop enabling, stop enabling, stop enabling, you might have a real question that you've never asked. Well, what is enabling? Okay, so I'm going to tell you the difference between enabling and helping. This is what all family members need to know. Here are the differences. Enabling is doing something for someone that they should be doing for themselves. Doing something for another person that person should be doing for themselves. That's called enabling. Helping is doing something for someone that they can't do themselves. They can't do it. So if they can do it and you do it for them, you're enabling them. If they can't do it and you do it for them, you're helping them. What's the difference there? Well, it's a wide variety. But most parents fall into this trap of enabling a kid. And when you enable someone, you're also turning on the red carpet for addiction to continue. Like, feel free to do what you want to do because I got you. And no matter what consequences you're going to have, I'm going to bail you out. And that's a really dangerous path. The next one, and again, if anyone's got any questions or any experiences that you've had personally with any of these topics, feel free to write them on the comment. It's not just for yourself. It'll help another person out, because a lot of people do watch these videos on recording too. So the next topic that's talked about in the rooms is this topic of powerlessness. Now, most family members, parents, they don't want to say I'm powerless over the situation, especially if they're successful in their own lives. If there's a person that's successful in their own lives. What's up, Pejman? Good morning. Edith Mowadak. Thank you for saying what's up to everyone that's here. Powerlessness is something that most human beings don't want to accept and don't want to admit, don't want to accept, don't want to even say it out loud, because it's automatically associated with a sign of weakness. Yet powerlessness is a sign of strength. It's understanding what you're up against. Powerlessness with the family says, I'm powerless over the addiction of my loved one. I'm powerless over people. I'm powerless over places. I'm powerless over things. And when you truly understand what that means, it doesn't mean that you can't make choices in life and do things in life and get certain outcomes in life. But when it comes to addiction, when it comes to other people, you're powerless. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. So That's one of the components of the support groups that people have like a reaction, a negative reaction to, is like, they want me to admit I'm powerless. They want me to say I'm powerless. There's no way. Don't you know who I am? Don't you know what I've accomplished? Don't you know what I've achieved in life? What do you mean I'm powerless? I'm a powerful person. I can do whatever I want. That's completely against what the concept of powerlessness is here. Like, you're powerless over your loved one's addictions and the consequences of that addiction. You're powerless over it. And here's the thing. If you don't want to take my word for it, I invite you to look at a historical reference of points in time in your own life with your kid's addiction. When were you ever successful? When were you ever able to control their drinking, their using? When were you ever successful to be able to take away the consequences of their actions and all that kind of stuff? When you really get true to it, and you lift the veil of kind of like denial, and you say, wow, ever since they're 16 years old, I thought I was, but it looks like I wasn't now that they're 32 years old. And that's what the important part of powerlessness. So that's really talked about in the support groups. The next one, whether you're in a therapeutic setting or in Al-Anon, for example, the concept of a family disease comes up. And again, a lot of individuals don't like that whole connotation of a disease happening here, because we're so ingrained in our mind to think of diseases as stuff like cancer and diabetes and all that cardiovascular stuff. We don't look at something that has overt, signs and symptoms, and it's progressive and it could lead to death as a disease, which, by the way, are the definitions of diseases. And but it's a family disease. And I'll tell you this: you go in there thinking that your loved one is the only one struggling because of their alcoholism, their drug addiction. Guess what? You are struggling just as much. If I would even say sometimes family members struggle more than the loved one, because the loved one's going through the process high and under the influence. The family member goes through the process oftentimes clean and sober without any type of substances. So they actually feel everything. The individual using the drugs is comfortably numb. The family member is painfully aware of what's going on. So, and that's just the two individuals. Now, the family unit is oftentimes a little bit larger than that. What is the family unit? It could be the spouse, whether that's biological, husband and wife, or second marriages with previous relationships, or it's grandparents even get significantly impacted through addiction. It was one of the most interesting things in my life. One of my grandmas, my mom's mom, she saw my drinking. I thought she didn't know that I drank a lot of, alcohol and did some substances. I really did not think that she knew, because she was older in age. And we took her to a family group one time, and it's as if she was waiting for years to have a microphone in front of her and be able to share her perspective of my demise. And she was so innately aware, in tune with what was happening. She knew I was struggling. She knew how bad I was struggling. She knew how long I was struggling for. And she knew it because I wasn't the same person I used to be before. I wasn't the same way at parties. I wasn't the same way at get-togethers. I wasn't the same way present when I would sit with her. And this is someone without any type of direct individual, contact, on a regular basis, noticed it in moments of time. And she just shared it and shared it and shared it. She said he would just come home and run upstairs to his room as fast as he could. And that wasn't like him. I had to, because I was under the influence and I didn't want anyone to see me. But even grandparents are impacted. The family unit, siblings are destroyed in family units when there's addiction. And you might think, well, what is that? We always protect the young ones. We always take care of the young ones. We make sure that they're shielded and not exposed to it. They're not exposed from emotional connection. They're not exposed from feeling the anxiety and the fear and the sadness. People think that just by seeing something that people get impacted. It's not even true. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm sitting here right now and somebody outside the store just received the most painful news they could have received, or they just got very pissed off and very, very angry at a phone call, just very, very angry. And they came into this room and sat right next to me in this chair, didn't say a word. I, without saying a word to them, and them without saying a word to me, will pick up on that energy, will pick up on that discomfort, will pick up something's not right with this person without saying a word. And I'll leave and I'll feel different as a result of that interaction. And if someone comes in here right before they walk in, here's the best news they possibly could have heard. they're happy, they're ecstatic, they're joyful, they're full of like just like energy, and they come sit next to me and they're just sitting here happy and peaceful. Guess what? I'll feel happy and peaceful as a result of that interaction. So don't tell me that the 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids inside the home that have an older sibling that's out there drinking and using, just because they're not drinking and using or watching that person, they don't feel it. As soon as they sit in a car with you as a parent driving somewhere, they'll feel your sadness. And that's why a lot of times there are also programs for 12-step programs for children. Like it's called Alateen, right? Some of you might not know that, but it's for teenagers, for younger kids, for individuals that are in a family unit that have someone, a mom, a dad, a sibling, someone in their life that's just going, deep in addiction, because they need to have a place to go vent. Because if they don't, guess what they do? They bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up. And it might not turn into addiction, drug addiction, but it'll turn into anxiety. It'll turn into depression. It'll turn into behavior issues, or it'll turn into high achieving, trying to be perfect, trying to be the hero and all that kind of stuff, which later on in life becomes so much weight on one's back. And this is a deep comment. So I want you guys to know why this is important. This is not, so it says the disease of loved one became a greatest treasure for me in life to know myself and my limitations and powers. So this is a father, and and sorry, real quick, I'll get back to Jim just said something in ala preteen. So this is even for younger, which, by the way, when the brain development, the younger they go, the language needs to change. So these different programs tailor to the communication abilities of people those age. Thanks, Jim, for pointing that out. Back to Hussein here. I want every family member to know this, that when someone, a father of someone that struggles with addiction says that my loved one's addiction became the greatest treasure in my life, this is not a thought process that someone gets into immediately, okay? So when your loved one is struggling with addiction, you're not like, oh, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. This helped me find myself and my limitations and my powers. This is a developed statement that's happened over a period of time. For this gentleman, it's been about 3 years' time. So for 3 years' time, it took for him to get to this perspective. In the beginning, I can't speak for him, but I promise you it was something like this. This is the worst thing that happened to me. This is the worst thing that happened to our family. This is destroying our family right now. Our loved one is, self-destructing, and there's nothing we can do about it. And all we can do is just sit back and watch this, and hopefully one day they get it, right? That's where it starts, and hopefully that's where it gets to. And by the way, where he is right now is only the beginning of the process. 10 years from now, it'll be another level of development, which I'm excited for all people to realize that they can continue developing in the process of recovery. So that was the family disease component of it. The next one is this thing called detachment. Detachment kind of gets a bad rap sometimes, because if detachment is done wrong, it feels like abandonment. And detachment means this: it's loving detachment. And it's loving detachment of the fact that I'm no longer going to go try to save the day. I'm going to allow someone to experience the natural consequences of their addiction. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to talk to them, love them, support them. It just means you ain't going to save them and rescue them. Now, if the loved one doesn't have the capacity to understand the difference, that's not your responsibility. If they think that you providing them with money and bailing them out is your definition of love, then they need to learn what love truly means. Because you could show up with someone without a penny in your pocket and without buying something and getting something, and just being present and just being there physically, and give them the greatest gift of life. So detachment, loving detachment is what it's called, is you got to do this as a human being that's living with addictions. One day when you get to a point, it's called being sick and tired of being sick and tired, that you just put your hands up in the air, you admit your powerlessness and say, I can't do this anymore. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop loving my loved one. I'm going to stop being there in their life. I'm going to stop talking to them. I'm going to start communicating. None of that. Detachment just means I'm going to detach from trying to be the person that always tries to fix this thing. Let them fix it on their own. If they can't do it on their own, I'll pray and hope that they find some support groups, some people that can help them along the journey, because I've tried long and hard, and here's my white flag and I surrender. Greatest thing you can do is just give up the fight that you're trying to fix it. The younger a kid is, the harder this is to do. The older the kid gets, it's a little easier to do, but not for everyone. So, and it does feel like this is the exact opposite of what you should be doing, But like I said, all you have to do is look at your own experience, look at your own history, and see how effective you have been when you weren't detaching. Right? Just be honest with it. To thine own self be true, right? You don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell anybody. Just go look and say, okay, in the past 10 years, I did not detach and I tried to over attach and over control and try to fix things. How did that work for you? And you got to try something different. So the next one that comes up a lot in support groups is this thing called focusing on ourselves or yourselves. Because here's the truth. How do you keep the focus on your spiritual journey of recovery and not on anyone else's behavior? Because when a family member walks into recovery for themselves, the only thing they're looking at is the behavior of their loved one and what they're doing and not doing, what they're using and not using, how they're doing and not doing. When you're looking at somebody else the whole entire time, don't tell me you're also able to look at yourself. It's impossible. I can't look forward and look at myself at the same time. It is impossible. And one of the components of 12-step programs is to stop externalizing and start internalizing and looking at self in your own spiritual journey. And you trust that others are doing the same. I know that's like a difficult concept. Is like, how can I just trust they're doing? What if they're not? Well, the moment you say, what if they're not? My question is, well, what are you doing for yourself? And for family members who are severely codependent, what I'm saying right now might be a very foreign concept. It's like, hey, man, I'm not here to look at myself. My life was good before this addiction thing happened. Well, here's the thing. The addiction thing happened, right? You can't deny something that's happened. It's not like, well, if it didn't happen, I would have been okay. Well, here it happened. It's kind of like saying, if I never got in that car accident, I would have been fine. Well, you got in the car accident. So once you own up to the fact that addiction happened, and it's not just happened like recently this weekend, addiction's been happening in your life if you're honest about it for a long period of time. You don't want to look and see maybe what part you've had in this thing? Nothing? No part, right? Like, we're so highly connected in this world that everything has a cause and effect. And if you don't think that you on some level have some role to play in this great thing of a family dynamic of yours, I admire the amount of like not willing to look at oneself, because that's like a high level. But if you really get real with yourself, you're like, man, he's got a point. And I'm not saying you caused it and you're not the fault of it. You know, one of the things they teach actually family members, you didn't cause it, you can't change it, you can't control it. So I'm not saying you caused it, but maybe you had a little part in the thing, right? Maybe you had a part in the thing. So the next one, it's forgiveness is always talked about. And it seems to be one of those spiritual truths that before you can be forgiven, you must first forgive. Okay. So you must first forgive self, forgive others. Because here's the thing. If you wait around to be forgiven, if you wait around for someone else to forgive you, what if they never do? But if you're the one that goes and starts forgiving self and others, you actually have control in that action. There's one thing we have control over is ourselves, our attitude, our actions. So why not go out there asking for forgiveness anywhere that we can? And again, some people might say, I have nothing to be forgiven for. It's like, well, I've talked to some people here and there, you know, they've shared some stories. It might not be a big deal to you, but maybe it's a big deal to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And again, forgiveness allows us to get on a spiritual path, spiritual journey. The next one is honesty. Is something that comes up in these rooms, in these settings. And so do you have difficulty with the honesty part of the program? So the program, if you're in the Al-Anon program, or for, you know, those individuals with addiction, in the 12-step programs for self, and there are other programs, by the way, there's something called Celebrate Recovery, which is faith-based, you know, through churches and stuff like that. They have really nice groups, small groups, topic groups, men's groups, women's groups, like gender specific groups. They're pretty open, all inclusive. There is something called refuge recovery, which is kind of the path of enlightenment through the Buddhist terminology. There's something called SMART recovery, which is SMART is just an acronym. Jim's actually certified with it too. And there's also something called moderation management. I mean, there's stuff out there, and that's okay, right? Whatever it is. And there's just good outpatient, you know, group counseling that could be wonderful over a period of time. You know, you go to group counseling for a year and you really engage and interact and invest in it, some really powerful insights can happen. Is it okay to forgive but don't forget? Absolutely. I think so. As long as the forgiveness is not, conditional. Like if you forgive, you forgive. And the reason why it's okay not to forget, by the way, it's because you never want to learn the same lesson twice. So you can forgive somebody. Here's the perfect thing, Jose John. You can forgive somebody for something that they've did to you, to others. But the reason why you actually don't want to forget it is because once you forgive someone for something they've done, I hope to God that you set a boundary right there to prevent you from ever getting harmed from that again. And the only way that can happen is not forgetting about it. So, in the program, they say, don't ever forget your last drunk. The last time you drunk, don't ever forget it because you don't want to repeat it again. So you can always forgive and you don't have to forget, as long as, like I said, the forgiveness doesn't have some type of a condition attached to it to kind of have some power thing to it. I'm gonna forgive you this time, but don't you know I'm forgiving you? You do it for yourself. If you want to forgive someone, do it for yourself. Set the boundary to prevent yourself from getting hurt again. Has nothing to do with them. The next one, and the other thing with honesty is, like, after so many years of covering up and holding secrets and all that kind of stuff, it's easy to understand why being honest is difficult. I mean, so many family systems have so many secrets inside of them. So many moms don't tell things to dads, and dads don't tell things to moms, and siblings don't say things to parents and all that kind of stuff because everyone's trying to protect each other and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, family gets in recovery and everyone's got to be honest. It's like, how am I going to get honest with the fact that for 10 years I lied about this, that kind of stuff. So, but people go in there in these meetings and they talk about it. So it's a very powerful thing. The next one says looking after you. When you start looking after yourself first and addressing your problems, you aren't contributing as much to the chaos and confusion. The person with an alcohol use disorder can stop reacting to your efforts to control them. You won't be stopping them from drinking, but your situation and attitude will be changed. So when you, again, focus on yourself and addressing your problems, what that does is the loved one realizes, hey, they're not even talking about me right now. They're not telling me what I'm doing is wrong. They're not telling me what I need to be doing, what I should be doing. They're actually just like letting me be. And that is such a powerful space for a person to experience, because for so long, the space was so hostile. It was so, you're wrong, you should change, you're the problem. If only you were this way, we wouldn't be this way. I mean, who can thrive in that environment? But when everyone's saying, yeah, I did this for myself, I'm doing this for myself, I'm recovering here, I'm going to these retreats, I'm going to the food bank to help out some people, and they're like, wait, why is nobody paying attention to me? And then the space gets created for the individual to start recovering on their own. And you can't even control that, by the way. Whether they do or they don't, none of your business. Takes us into the next one, which says minding your own business. So at Al-Anon, somebody else's drinking is none of your business. You're not responsible for somebody else's choices. I don't even care if you're their parent. And this is obviously adults I'm talking about here. Okay. So when someone's an adolescent, there is some sense of responsibility that's connected to the parents. But when someone's 18 in the standard, traditional world, adult and over, you're not responsible for their choices. You're not responsible for their actions. You're not responsible for their drinking. Now, some family members think that because they're associated to them, it makes them look bad. It makes them look like poor parents. It makes them look like they failed and all that kind of stuff. I promise you this, that is your own internal dialogue telling you that. It's a belief system. It's a cultural belief. It's a upbringing belief that's not rooted in any type of facts. Like at the end of the day, trust me, people don't care. A few people that are related to you might like have some snide comments and stuff like that. But for the most part in the world, like nobody cares that your loved one's acting out. Nobody cares. All right. So you got to make sure that you're minding your own business. I had this analogy I used to use, like, the hula hoop that we put around our waist and we kind of do the little hula hoop thing. Hold the hula hoop above your head and then let it drop down to the floor. Everything inside the hula hoop is your business. Everything outside the hula hoop is none of your business. If you can live your life that way, gosh, how powerful it would be. I've said this to a few family members too. I told them the hula hoop analogy. And unfortunately, they love what's happening outside the hula hoop. They don't like looking inside the hula hoop. And remember, people have a constant guilt on the part of the codependent. Yeah, it is. it's guilt, because codependents also believe this. And Kathleen, thank you for that comment. Codependents also always believe that it's something that they could or should have done that would have prevented this, right? It's like their own, almost like a narrative, false narrative that they believe in. It's not based in truth. I've worked with a lot of human beings that have said the same thing. And unfortunately, it's what they need to go through. But eventually they have to realize, like, dang, no matter what I've done, I can't do it. And I've done my best. Because guilt goes away the moment someone realizes that they've done their best. Guilt is a byproduct of one or two things, if you didn't know. It's either doing something you shouldn't have done or not doing something you should have done. That's where guilt comes from. Guilt is an action or an inaction. It comes from one or two things: doing something you shouldn't have done or not doing something you should have done. But if you always do your best, you can't have guilt in that space, right? The last few that I have here, I got 4 of these left. The next one is trust. So trust is a problem when you first come into Al-Anon. All the lies, the betrayals, the secrets can leave your heart broken and hardened. Have you begun to learn to trust yourself and others? I mean, come on. This one's obvious, right? It's how many times did someone tell you they were going to do something and they didn't do it? But I will tell you this. I've worked with a lot of people, human beings, that their family doesn't trust them anymore. Long before the individual started using substances, they lost their trust in their family at some point. They just didn't have the words to say it. So when a family member tells their kid, I'll always be there for you. When a family member tells their kid, I'll protect you from everything, I'll never let you get hurt, all that kind of stuff. And then they're not there for them. They leave them. Things happen in their life that they end up getting psychologically, physically, sexually abused. What do you think happens to the trust of that individual to their family? They stop trusting the family in the world long before the family stopped trusting them. So sometimes when parents come in and they say, I just don't trust my kid anymore. I'm like, well, your kid doesn't trust you either. And it's like, they don't believe that because they say, but I've done everything for them. You've done everything to the best of your ability, but it doesn't mean that at some point in life you fell short, like all of us fall short, and people's trust got impacted. People's trust got impacted. And I'm not saying if it's right or wrong or it's cause or blame, but I'm saying there might be some truth to it. The next one is dealing with verbal abuse. Please, this one's important for family members. You have a right as a human being to not expose yourself or accept any type of abuse. When your loved one, right? When your loved one starts talking to you in a way that's considered abusive, starts talking about things that to you that are considered abusive, if you just take it in and then get mad at your loved one for talking that way and it gets into an argument, that's not on your loved one. That's on you. Verbal abuse stops the moment you choose for it to stop. You tell someone, I will not allow you to speak to me this way, and that's it. Once you say that, that's up to you if you want to stick around to hear the rest. And it is important to understand that with detachment with love is letting someone know, I'm going to love the hell out of you and I'll listen to every single thing you want to say and I'll conversate with you. If it gets to the point that you're being abusive, I can't do it. It's nothing to do with you. If that's the way you communicate, that's okay. It's just not the way I can receive it. It hurts my heart. It messes me up. It causes me to stress. Set that boundary in dealing with verbal abuse. It's very, very important. The next one is the understanding and encouragement. So part of Al-Anon's primary purpose is to offer understanding and encouragement. So don't ever think that it's wrong to encourage your loved one when they're doing the right thing. Man, people love it. We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be encouraged in life, right? Everybody does. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. Everybody wants to be encouraged. So don't hold back on that, letting people know that they're doing well. Because they might not be doing well in the grand scheme of things, but considering versus the time when they were struggling with addictions, maybe they are doing well. Maybe they are making some progress. And the very last one that I have here before I got to go, a little bit shorter today, is just a slogan of one day at a time. You hear it in every program. You hear it in every group. You hear it when someone's dealing with grief and loss. We tell them, hey, just one day at a time. You hear it when someone's trying to do big changes in their life and trying to transform their body, trying to change a career, trying to deal with addictions, trying to deal with mental health. One day at a time. There's so much wisdom in that simple, almost corny slogan, because that's the only thing you can control anyways. Sometimes parents tell me, well, what do I do if this, and this happens? I'm like, shit, I don't even know what to do if all this, and this happens, because there's a high probability that only this or this is going to happen and not all of that's going to happen. So why go through that whole process? You think you're really getting ready for something that may or may not happen. You're really not. It's just your anxiety is calming down. So one day at a time, just live right now, make choices today, make the best choices you can, learn how to live well, and learn how to experience recovery well. It's the best that any one of us can do. So today's talk, just in summary, was about different topics that you might hear in support groups. And why this was important is because I have a feeling that if you're watching this and you don't go to support groups, these topics, 1, 2, 5, 10, or all of them, were things that you have experienced firsthand. So if you're working through these with a primary therapist or, a counselor, a life coach, or something like that, that's cool. But just know that you can also work on these for free in support groups in your local community, places that you can go with moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, just like yourself, that have been dealing with the same stuff, and get some support for yourself. Because at the end of it, you find yourself. Remember, our working definition of recovery is to regain something or someone who has been lost, stolen, or destroyed. And that something or someone is you. So thank you, everyone. I love and appreciate all of you. Thank you for the side chats. And I will be back same place, same time next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.